industrial bleach, sour sweat, and the faint metallic tang of precursor chemicals. You can't feel your fingertips through the 3 layers of nitrile gloves, but you can feel the rhythmic hum of the ventilation fans vibrating through the soles of your boots. A single drop of perspiration crawls down your spine. Trapped under a level A hazmat suit that has become your entire world for the last 14 hours. You are not a criminal. You are a high-precision molecular architect in a laboratory that doesn't officially exist. On the stainless steel table sits a kilo of blue magic worth $2.5 million once it hits the streets of Chicago, but to you, it is simply a successful reaction. The door upstairs creaks open, and the heavy thud of combat boots nears the top of the stairs. You don't look up. In this basement, you are the most protected asset the cartel owns, and simultaneously, the most disposable. One wrong measurement and you're a ghost. One successful batch and you're a god in a golden cage. You didn't start in a basement in Culiacán. You started in a sterile, fluorescent-lit laboratory with a PhD in organic chemistry and a $120,000 student loan debt. For 15 years, you were a senior research associate, a title that sounded prestigious but paid just enough to keep you exactly 2 paychecks away from insolvency. You were a logistical unit in a corporate machine developing life-saving compounds for a pharmaceutical giant that patented your soul and sold it back to the public at a 4,000% markup. Then came the restructuring. The company didn't fire you, they simply rendered your existence redundant. You were 44 years old, overqualified for entry-level work, and too expensive for the mid-market. That's when the man in the charcoal suit met you at a quiet bar in San Diego. He didn't offer you a crime, he offered you a consultancy for a private manufacturing firm looking to optimize their supply chain. The transition happened in 3 stages. First, it was a $50,000 signing bonus delivered in a gym bag, more cash than you had seen in a decade of legitimate labor. Second, it was the realization that your specialized skills were the only thing standing between a multi-billion-dollar empire and a total collapse of product quality. Third was the flight to a private airstrip where your passport was taken for safekeeping. You are now the chief technical officer of a shadow economy. Your lab is state-of-the-art, funded by the $350 million in net profits that the organization launders through shell companies every quarter. You are responsible for the financial anatomy of the streets. Every gram you cook represents a $2,000 profit margin for the men upstairs. But in this world, there is no HR department and no retirement plan. Your employment contract is written in the blood of the man you replaced. You realize then that the cage is golden, but the lock is real. You aren't a scientist anymore. You are a weapon system with a pulse, creating a product so potent that a dusting the size of a snowflake can end a life. You are rich on paper and paralyzed in practice, a prisoner of your own brilliance. The laboratory hums with the sound of a $4.2 million investment in centrifugal glass and pressurized reactors. You are no longer just cooking. You are optimizing a supply chain that spans 14 different countries. Every Tuesday at 4 a.m., a shipment of precursor chemicals arrives in unmarked blue barrels, accompanied by a manifest that lists them as industrial cleaning solvents. You have exactly 72 hours to convert these raw materials into 50 kilograms of pure product before the transport team returns. The pressure is a physical weight. In this world, quality control isn't a corporate buzzword. It's a survival mechanism. You remember the first time a batch came out slightly discolored? A pale lavender instead of the signature sky blue? The lead enforcer, a man who knows each of his koi fish by name and tends to them with a silk net, didn't scream. He simply stood behind you, his hand resting lightly on the hilt of a blade, and whispered that every gram of impurity represents a $5,000 loss in potential street revenue. You are a weapon system with a pulse. You have moved from level 4, lead chemist, to level 7, regional production architect. Your compensation has scaled accordingly. Your offshore account now holds more than $2.4 million in annual consulting fees, but you haven't taken a vacation in 4 years. Not a real one. You are the most powerful man in a building you can't leave. The stakes escalate when the agency that doesn't exist starts sniffing around the coastal ports. The order comes down. Double the potency, Have the volume. They want a super salt that can be hidden in the lining of a suitcase. You spend your nights calculating molecular weights and send-to-receiver ratios. You realize you're a small business owner in the murder industry. Every success brings a new layer of isolation. Your children have attended 5 different schools before high school, always under different surnames. You see them through an encrypted video link once a week, but you are a stranger to them. A logistical unit stored on a shelf in a basement halfway across the world. The money moves through 22 shell companies to reach them, but every dollar feels like a weight on your chest. You've been 19 different people in 14 countries, and you're starting to forget which one was actually you. The decision that changes everything doesn't happen with a gunshot. It happens with a digital notification on an encrypted laptop. You are sitting in the corner of the lab, the air thick with the smell of the blue magic that has become your life's work. The notification is a short, clipped message from a contact you've kept in the agency that doesn't exist. It contains a single PDF, a manifest of every chemical precursor you've ordered in the last 6 months. Cross-referenced with your daughter's school tuition payments in Switzerland, the realization hits you like a physical blow. You were never the protagonist of this story. You were always ammunition. You realize the system was never neutral. The man who owns the ports, the man who owns the police, and the man who braids his daughter's hair every morning? He has known about your exit strategy from day one. You thought you were building a ladder out of this basement, but you were only digging the hole deeper. You have 72 hours before they present the evidence to a judge. You are rich on paper and paralyzed in practice. And now, the unreliable safety signal has flashed red. A note left on your cooling rack says the file has already been sent to the U.S. Attorney's Office by the same law firm your employer retained to protect you. This is the point where the occupational metaphor of being a consultant dies and the reality of being a fixed asset begins. You look at the 50 kilograms of product on the table. It represents $2.5 billion in gross revenue for the organization annually. But for you, it is now a suicide note. You have 2 choices. Finish the batch and hope they keep you alive because you're too expensive to kill, or sabotage the reaction and ensure no one walks out of this basement. You reach for the hydrochloric acid. Your hands are steady, a trait of a man who has timed his heartbeats to the rhythm of a dropper for years. Every status upgrade you ever received, the money, the security, the most feared title, is immediately met with this final, devastating cost. The cage is golden, but as you hear the heavy thud of boots returning to the top of the stairs, you finally accept that the lock is real. The silence in the lab is heavier than the hum of the machines ever was. You are sitting on a cold metal stool, staring at a $2.5 million batch that now looks like a pile of salt in a desert you'll never cross. The occupational metaphor has shifted. You aren't a chemist anymore. You are a fixed asset whose depreciation is accelerating. You've spent 422 days in this basement, and the sensory immersion is starting to rot your mind. The smell of bleach, the metallic tang, and the persistent itch of the hazmat suit that you can't scratch. Isolation isn't just being alone, it's the realization that your empire exists entirely within a perimeter fence. You have everything a man could want: millions in offshore accounts, high-precision equipment, and the protection of the world's deadliest cartel. Accept the possibility of being normal. You realize that every deposit over $10,000 was flagged by the feds, a currency transaction report you were too busy cooking to notice. The system was always operating you. The unreliable safety signal arrives in the form of a gift. A box of expensive cigars from the boss. In this world, a gift isn't a reward. It's a receipt. It means they know you've finished the super salt formula. It means your logistical unit has reached its maximum utility. You think of the CIA agent who once told you that the agency and the cartel have more in common than either would admit. They both view you as a weapon system with a pulse, and weapons are decommissioned once the war changes. You look at the camera in the corner. You know someone is watching the feed. Perhaps the man who braids his daughter's hair every morning before sending men to dispose of bodies. You are rich on paper and paralyzed in practice. A prisoner of a system that divides the world into those who use and those who are used. The moral compromise cascade is complete. You started by optimizing a supply chain. You ended by engineering a plague. Your hands shake as you realize that the note about the U.S. Attorney's Office wasn't a threat from the government. It was a leak from the cartel's own law firm to ensure you never think about leaving. You are the most powerful man in a building you can't leave. And the darkest part is that you can't stop. The system has captured you, and the cost ledger is finally balanced. You traded your soul for a library job at 31 cents an hour in a cage made of gold. The lab door doesn't creak this time. It is kicked open by the men in tactical gear who have been your silent shadows for 422 days. You expect the barrel of a rifle, but instead, they bring a folding chair and a satellite phone. The man who braids his daughter's hair every morning, the boss who tends to his koi pond and knows each fish by name, is on the other end of the line. He doesn't offer a threat. He offers a systemic irony reveal that collapses your remaining sanity. You think you're a prisoner of the cartel, he says, his voice as calm as a lecture hall. But look at the manifest again. The precursor chemicals didn't come from a shell company in Panama. They came from the same pharmaceutical giant that structured you 3 years ago. You stare at the blue barrels. The realization hits like a chemical burn. You were never a rogue chemist. You were a subcontracted logistical unit in a corporate state partnership designed to manage the surplus population while generating $2.5 billion in annual gross revenue. The agency that doesn't exist isn't hunting you. They are your quality control auditors. Every deposit into your daughter's Swiss account was a hazardous duty incentive pay approved by the very government you thought you were hiding from. The unreliable safety signal wasn't a warning of your arrest. It was a notification that your patent for the super salt formula had been successfully filed under a different name. You are the most powerful man in a building you can't leave, because you are the only one who can sign off on the purity of a plague. The dark irony is that the system didn't just capture you. It manufactured the circumstances of your failure to ensure you had nowhere else to go. You are rich on paper, but you are a weapon system with a pulse, and like any tool, your value depends entirely on how and when the system chooses to use you. The boss hangs up. The enforcer drops a new list of precursors on the table. The cycle has been spinning for 100 years, and you are just the latest gear. You realize the point of no return was past the moment you accepted that first $50,000 signing bonus in a gym bag. You are now a small business owner in the murder industry, and your only retirement plan is the single $100 bill tucked under a coffee cup when the next chemist arrives to take your place. The enforcers leave as quietly as they arrived, the heavy steel door thudding shut with a finality that echoes through the concrete. You are alone again with the hum of the ventilation and the $2.5 million in blue magic that now feels like a pile of radioactive ash. You walk to the small reinforced window, but there is no sun, only the artificial glow of the high-pressure sodium lights reflecting off the stainless steel. You realize now that the cage is golden, but the lock is real. The cycle continues. Somewhere in a university lab right now, a 28-year-old postdoc is staring at a mounting pile of debt and a restructuring notice waiting for a man in a charcoal suit to offer them a consultancy. They will think they are the protagonist of their own story, just as you did. They will believe that their specialized skills make them indispensable, failing to realize they are just a logistical unit being stored on the correct shelf until their utility reaches zero. You pick up the 3-holed nitrile gloves and begin the next reaction. Your hands don't shake anymore. There is a strange, hollow peace in knowing that you were never the one in control. The system was always operating you, using your brilliance to fuel a machine that doesn't acknowledge your existence. You are a weapon system with a pulse, generating value you'll never capture. In the distance, you hear the faint sound of a child laughing, perhaps the boss's daughter, or perhaps just a ghost of the life you left behind. You realize the most resonant endings aren't about escape. They are about the dawning realization of inevitability. You reach for the precursor bottle, your movements mechanical and precise. The machine keeps running, and the darkest part, you can't stop. That wraps it up for today. The story you just heard is fiction, but the financial anatomy of synthetic drug production often mirrors legitimate pharmaceutical logistics, where real-world superlabs utilize diverted precursor chemicals through complex global supply chains. If this one hit different, drop a comment and tell me which moment hit hardest: the realization of the corporate connection or the finality of the golden cage. I've got more stories like this coming, so hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.